Morning. Today is Saturday. Today is the 3rd of February, and we are on site at the local vigilance area yet again. We are doing the same thing more or less. Last week, we're trying to follow up on the mystery audio from about 3 weeks ago. If it's following the pattern from last year, I don't expect to encounter it because it seems to be a one-time affair. If there's a pattern to it, and there seems to be, making it a little bit more strange, but that's part of what we're going to do. It's also, as you can see, snowy. So we're going to be doing some tracking today too, just because the opportunity is there. And anything else that occurs is incidental. But last week I came across a small black bear track, so you never know what you're going to find in here. Let's get going, see what we find, and we'll see what the day brings. Thanks. We're back. So far, nothing on the audio front. It's going to kind of be a rambling one, I suspect, because there wasn't really a lot going on in the community unless something occurs to me. I'm searching for topics today. So let's see what's out here. We're going to do some tracking. So far, I've seen signs of Bambi and old signs of beaver. Then again, you got a beaver lodge there, and if you look through the trees over there, you got a beaver lodge over there. So there are beaver in this pond. Saw signs of a coyote / coy dog, because could have just been somebody's dog that got loose too. The dog tracks look domestic, but coy dog tracks look domestic if you've ever seen them. So right here, what do we got? Hard to tell. Looking at this, it is hard to tell. As you can see, there's a lot of like dripping snow impact marks too that are. Doesn't look like a deer per se. I don't know. Let's backtrack and see what we find over here. It'll give up. Okay, based on this, it is a deer, in fact. The size of the stride would point that way too, although a big coyote wouldn't be, or a coy wolf wouldn't be out of the question, but that is a sizable buck probably. Just because right here you can see the little bit of the cloven part of the hoof where that is right there. So there's that. I suppose I can give a weather report. So today, for the first time literally in 2 weeks, you can see the sun, believe it or not. The private joke at work has basically been, we're not having winter this year as much as we're having Seattle. It's been cloudy and rainy down, at least in central Connecticut, for most of the last 2 weeks. Today's the first time I'm actually getting some vitamin D out in the sun. It's just been cloudy. Like, we're having a weird stretch of weather up here this year. But so this is actually refreshing, being out in actual real snow, because that's what you expect this time of year. Not a lot. I mean, obviously, this isn't really more than, in the deep spots, it's 2 inches. So, I mean, they got a little dusting or something. Not a lot, but it's good for tracking. So we'll do that today. Just like you like to get out of the house before the better half and I celebrate our anniversary later today, or the pre-anniversary. The actual anniversary is next week, but she has not that she wants you to know this, but she has a shitty work schedule coming up, so we might have to flub the date in order to get the occasion taken care of, but a flexible approach saves you from missing it, and an attentive partner doesn't do such things. So that is going to be your ganglion relationship therapy plug for the day. Back to the matter at hand. So I did get approached by a gentleman who's eager to get back into Vermont. And now that I have commented in the past, as my transportation situation has stabilized, I might be due for a trip up there. I just need to find a favorable day when it's not going to be so cold that it's just preventative in addition to a location where you know you're going to be able to get in and not get stuck, because they don't really plow up there with the same diligence you do down here, because everybody apparently drives a Subaru or some other all-wheel drive vehicle that gets you around, being adapting to their environment. But that being said, you have people in Canada that go further north and it gets colder that basically drive diesel things, and you have to plug them into a charger thing to keep them running at night to go over to start them in the morning to get to work. So they probably think the Vermont people are wussies, but it's what you're used to, I suppose. So we're into that like quiet time of the year for bigfooting related things, mainly just because it is cold, and a lot of the people that live in colder areas than I do probably just stay in and decide it's not worth freezing your butt off over. I can understand that. I try to be for season though. So I guess we'll delve into other things, such as my forestry course. We finished up forest health, so I now know more than I ever thought I would about forest fire prevention, suppression, types of forest fires, what makes one the way it is, as well as the effects it has on soil and other things. And there's a lot going on with that. It's interesting. Next week we begin the module on aquaculture. So I might learn how to be a fishery running guy. Which I don't know if you find that interesting. Something about that I find fascinating, how they handle that. So I look forward to that. But so here you have some probable bobcat spray, although I don't know if there's a try. They look more like impact dense. It's kind of crunchy. I mean, how heavy is a bobcat that it's going to make a dent in the snow or not? They're not that light. But that is kitty cat's likely territorial marker. Today'd be a really good day for the audio to be going too, because despite the wind, if you just let me stop talking for a minute. Minus the wind, it's actually fairly quiet out here. The problem with the wind is that's going to give up infrasonic noise on my recorder, which is a false positive. You'd have to lean more towards the EMF and EF readings you'd get if it's the same thing I encountered last year. Yeah, I posted the numbers and the data from that. It was basically, you got all three, so there was something to it. This is Bambi yet again. Might even be the same buck we were following before. You see more spray here too, so it's random. That might actually be him. Because ungulates, I think, just kind of like they kind of spray as they go. They're not really the most potty trained of animals, I don't think. If you take moose as an example, they tend to just drop number 2 wherever they feel like, and they leave you a present waiting for you on the trail if you're not careful. So I guess we're just talking about naturalism stuff today, because unless, of course, you wanted to see a forest friend pop out. Not that I believe that's what they are. So let's cover that. We brought it up. There are those who think it is that the creature is one thing or another. And so I'm going to run the range of things that I have encountered people thinking they are. I'm not endorsing or bashing these things. This is the range of things to go, though. So I've yet to have anyone endorse the theory from the $6 Million Man way back when that it was an alien robot. Although they have claimed it's an alien, either UFO or orb piloting or interdimensional when you want to start at the extreme esoteric. And when I say interdimensional, you're starting to delve into the realm of Zorthism, where you basically have portals and mind speak and Matt Johnson's little delusional crazy world. And some people I will show a grudging respect for. Some people, on the other hand, are so far out of their gourd, and if not a wannabe predatory cult leader, I said that, they don't get a pass. And because people have like tried to DMCA people and try to like threaten them with a defamation lawsuit, if I ever got that from the Zorth man, I will say this: take me to court. I would love to see you attempt to make an argument for defamation in court as you are arguing what you think Bigfoot is. And I would like to see just how long it takes the judge to roll his eyes and throw your butt out on the street and out of court. Because quite honestly, if you got anything out of that, you'd probably lose your therapist license if you haven't already, because you should not be giving therapy. You desperately need therapy. And I dare say the Cult Awareness Network ought to really just take a look into your nonsense and make a call too, given some of the allegations you have against you. Moving on in the relative space of that, you delve into the more Native American realm, where it's like some kind of a spiritual protector of the forest. And then you delve into the forest friend kind of thing, where they're part physical, part spiritual, still in the paranormal realm, but slightly different. Then you have the Michael Merchant idea that there are plant people along those lines, which was one of the more interesting things. The thing with him, given the satirical nature of some of his material online, it's hard to tell if he's proposing this as a serious theory or just throwing it out there to stir the pot and see what comes of it, which is fine if that's what you're doing. But that was one of the more interesting fringe theories. And then you get into the flesh and blood realm, where you have Bigfoot being some form of pongid, hominid, anthropoid. You have the Southerners, who I won't name names because the jackass doesn't deserve my attention past a point, but they try to make it like it's a glorified ape, which I think is bullshit. I'll get to that in a minute. My theory on that is if they make it less human, they can justify shooting one, because that's the culture down there. I don't think it's an ape for two reasons. Number one, that doesn't jibe completely with what I've seen myself. Number two, if you look at our interactions with the great apes in remote places that are, to be blunt, a lot more remote than what you're looking at out here, bonobos, they are genetically very similar to humans, of gorillas, gibbons, but at the end of the day, their curiosity is what they were all found. They're highly intelligent animals. We're still looking for this thing, and if it is in fact out there, because I have seen it, I do believe it is. You're dealing with something that has at least a common sense level higher than those animals, and therefore does not, in my mind, classify along those lines beyond a point. I think you're dealing with some... My take on what it is falls healthily into the physical realm. And I say that with the following statement. I have been doing this research daytime and nighttime since 2003. I have yet to see anything I would consider to be remotely close to being an orb. And yes, there's a hunter's blind still there right now. How you kind of know we're still, although it's looking a little more dilapidated, or is it? Yeah, it's looking a little bit more lopsided, which means that the tree probably dropped some snow on it from the look of it. Snow load is taking its toll on the structure, such as the structure is. So that brings us to, what is it? Some people would claim it's a branch of humanity. or a relic pseudo-human, this has more plausibility because that would be something smart enough to know that we are not good for it and it would avoid us. And it would still be on a human level of equivalent intelligence, knowing this area a whole lot better than even the most experienced hunter would. So what's my theory? My theory, and this is 110% conjecture, just to make the point, that at some point along the lines, you had a couple of different hominid types out there, and this is basically backed up by science. And our branch took the direction that we were going to embrace agriculture, eventually industry, and this kind of thing. There's another branch that went the polar opposite way and embraced nature and went that way. And if they are still among us and they are still out there and branched out among us, they may not like our way of doing things, but they also would have gotten so in tune with such an environment. That's why finding them is proving to be the bitch that it is. When you delve into some of the more subtopics of the matter, you get into things like mind speak. Humans, governments have conducted experiments into mind reading, ESP, and all this. And I'm going to call it telepathy because that is the proper term, and I'm not going to be a redneck sounding jackass like Matt Johnson. I'm not going to call him a doctor because he's not a valid doctor. You heard me, Matt. Come sue me, bitch. Mind speak is a redneck term. Sorry, I am not going to call it that. It's mind reading or ESP or projection of thought, which is all a form of telepathy, as presented in science fiction anyway. We can delve into a comic book realm of that in a minute. But again, when I delve into that, comic book science fiction, not reality. Because no government has ever admitted to having a successful experiment in A, mind reading, B, telekinesis, which is the mind over matter kind of stuff, or remote viewing. That the government's ever admitted to anyway, and if they did actually have success, they probably wouldn't own up to it anyway, because governments like their secrets. Although, covering them up forever, I say this from direct experience, having worked for a time for the federal government, they're not as smart as you think they are, and they would fuck up over time. My opinion. If that gets me on a no-fly list, oh well. I don't like flying anyway. So, and that being said, I'm not being political. I am actually a very apolitical person. I don't really favor either party, and if that bothers you, no one has a gun to your head making you watch this. So there you go. But getting back to the minutia of what they can or cannot do. What is that? Way up there, you have a down sticker. For a second, really looked like some kind of an animal. That's the fun of this, too. Your eyes can play tricks on you really easily out here. So, just in the argument of being out in this and being in tune with it, I have literally seen a deer walk into a meadow and effectively disappear just because the color of its hide versus the color of the tall grass merged that much that you lose it with your eyes. That is not Bambi having magical superpowers. That is the limitation of human vision and the perception of what you're seeing at the time. You could have a Bigfoot standing within 50 yards of here, and all it has to do is stand between the trees and hold still. And if you're at the wrong angle, you're not even going to know it's there until it moves. That is scientific fact. Again, not because of their magical superpowers, but because of the limitations of human sight. Moving on to more plausible things. This is the one I've probably mentioned this in prior videos, but infrasound is an interesting one because on the one hand, it sounds very, very wooish. But Are there animals in the animal kingdom that can use sound above and beyond normal sensory perception? And the answer is yes. Cetaceans in the ocean, whales, dolphins can do all kinds of crazy things. Dolphins can use sound to find, what is it? I think they're called blennies. There's a sort of a kind of fish that they burrow into the ground on flat sand beds, and the dolphins can find them by radiating the sound wave over the water to find them. And owls kind of do a weird thing with they have like the big radar dish faces, and the sound kind of bounces back, and they kind of do something similar, which is fascinating in its own right. But this is scientific proven fact that animals have these weird abilities that are not remotely paranormal. They have weird features to them. By the same token, you can make the argument that's aquatic mammals. So, well, explain bats. Bats see just fine. Bats hear just fine. Bats can use sound and sonar to echolocate prey at night in the dark. There's an animal using sound in a semi-weaponized form on land. Granted, a weird example, because bats are, to my knowledge, the only flying form of mammal that are like truly capable of sustained flight, not just gliding like a flying squirrel. And you have other esoteric arguments saying that like tigers and other animals can hit the infrasonic spectrum to like cause prey to hesitate while the tiger's pouncing on it and such. Not proven that I'm aware of, but not completely outside the realm of interesting possibility either, though. So if you were to have an animal or an intelligent proto-human go the route, according to my own proposed conjecture, and it gets out here into an area like this, and it were to develop defense mechanisms for avoiding things that are bad for it, bats can project out to find prey. Is it really so implausible to think that one could use the same kind of thing to avoid becoming prey, or using it for prey, or because it's an intelligent kind of sort of hominid, it can use it as it wants to? Because dolphins and whales seem to be able to use sound in a number of different ways. I mean, granted, they have water as a better medium, but why not? If it can happen in one, why not the other? It's really not that much of a stretch. So there's that. That's kind of like, so infrasound, because I've had an experience where I believe I had a sighting at literally the same time, and a camera was damaged by what I think is a burst of infrasound. Very strange day, but if you were there and you actually were witness to these events, it would make as much sense as opposed to something else. I don't completely dismiss infrasound, and the other stuff, again, crazy claims, crazy proof, and I'm not making claims here. I'm just saying I'm relating an experience and my perception of it. Again, conjecture. But we've entered into an area that's far enough out. You'd think you'd have more tracks, but you generally don't, which is interesting because you're near a water source all through there. I haven't actually gotten into that wetland because, frankly, it's a soggy, swampy little hellhole. And getting in, you can get around the edges of it, but getting inside, you better have hip waders and be prepared to get stuck in the mud. Similar to a couple of areas I know in Vermont where you can go in if you want, but if you do it in the middle of winter and you get stuck, you're not just having a bad day, you've probably put yourself in a large element of danger physically if you get stuck out there and you can't get out immediately, or you have to disrobe to get out because, put it this way, I didn't go up to Vermont 2 weeks ago because the wind chill where I would have normally gone was projected to be south of like minus 20 Fahrenheit, which if you're disrobing in that, you better be able to have like dry, warm clothes to get into real fast in a fire. Otherwise, you're going to have a really bad day. That's about as far into that subject as I think I can really go without rambling. So I'm going to take a segment break and consider other things to potentially discuss while we're here, while listening for that sound, which I have not heard, and I would have heard it by now going the distance I have. Otherwise, we'll be back in a bit, and I notice again that you have no deer tracks, and you have a little bit of like possible bobcat spray there. We'll be back in a bit, and I'll see if there's anything else I want to cover today. Thanks. Okay, we're back, and we're about where we are with this today, so we can consider this the outro. Like, subscribe, give me suggestions, as it is kind of a quiet time of year if you want me to do something I haven't done before. Comments, that kind of thing. I could share some reports from my personal database of reports I've taken over the years for the area. Maybe that would be interesting. I could do that. Maybe I will. And God forbid something happens like the audio comes back again. But I think it's good for the year because it doesn't seem to repeat itself. If it's even anything remotely, relevant to the subject or not. Other than that, we're going to call it a day, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you. Bye.